Aloha, and welcome back to another episode of the Ohana Packers Edition podcast, the podcast where we're recapping a massive win by the Packers who overcame themselves and themselves to beat the Texans today, 24 to 22. Joe, I don't know if I, yeah, I don't know who on the Packers still has feet to be shot off at this point, but a win is a win is a win. That was literally the definition of today's game.
Well, you said it. They kept shooting themselves in the foot this Texans team had a lot of people worried because of how good they can be, but really the only reason they scored points was because of mistakes by the Packers themselves.
and
So
just and just like
they
painfully bad
had
mistakes in the first half. Like, and then so the first half it was like, and we'll get into the good on our good, bad, and ugly. But yeah, just a quick recap. The first half was just like in inconceivable mistakes. The we'll get into it and the interceptions and stuff, but two interceptions by Jordan, and then just a total brain dead punt return sequence that, like you said, it gifted the Texans, 16 of their points and stuff. So can't keep it continuing to happen. But I tweeted it after the game, like I'm 7 games into the season, I'm still not sure if right now this team is a bad good team or a good bad team. And I know some people are like, what the fuck does that mean? But like, you know, I do think they swing to being more of a bad good team, which means that at their core they're a good team, but what makes them bad is they keep making mistakes, keep having too many penalties and stuff like that. But I do think they're more on that side than a wolf in sheep's clothing, which is what a good bad team is, where it's like, it's the whole like that bad boyfriend that does enough good things that makes you keep coming back to him kind of thing, like that, like the 2022 team, to start off the season. I raised a similar question, and then you kind of saw the house of cards fall apart the middle of October on that squad. So, as much as some people might say, like, how much of it is real and not, I think one of the good things you have to talk about this team is they have, outside of the game against Minnesota and Philadelphia, where they really just dug themselves too big of a hole in each, to different degrees in each game. But this team has found ways to win, and they found many different ways to win, much more stressful than they probably should be. But they're 5-2, and I forget. Oh shoot, I lost the tweet, but this is the first time that they're 3 games over 500 this early in the season since, or in any season, I should say, since the end of the 2021 season. So just uh, you know despite all the clenching, the hand wringing, it's a good spot for the team to be in what was a pretty, I don't want to say daunting part of the schedule, but going into it, it's kind of like, okay, like you expect them to win a bunch of these, but also some of these are kind of coin flippy, and so it's good to see them standing 5-2 and in the thick of the race of what's been a really competitive NFC North so far this season.
well, like I said, when we were doing our prediction for the season, there were half a dozen of games that we were like, I'm not sure about this one. And the Houston game was that because we knew CJ Stroud was an up and coming. We knew D'Amico Ryans was going to have the defense on top. We knew that they have weapons on offense. We knew that they had all this stuff. So it was going to be a rough game. But again, if they wouldn't have shot themselves in the foot a few different times, this game could have been a completely different one. I mean, yeah, I mean, let's just go ahead and get
Yeah.
into good, bad, ugly. We're dancing around it too much.
So good. You can go first. What's your first good point for the game?
Romeo Dobbs. I think last week was his reawakening. This week it was, and I think everybody with a brain knew that could see that even in throughout last year that Jordan preferred Dobbs because he was always his go-to guy, his guy that if I can't find this read, I can't find this read. I'm going to throw it to Romeo, and Romeo's going to get it. and 8 catches on 10 targets for 94 yards. He sadly couldn't get the touchdown, but it is what it is on that. But to come off of, this is week 2 after the quote unquote drama, which I still believe is not actually drama, temper tantrums or anything like that. And he's thriving. Now today was a little bit different than last week, where he actually seemed upbeat, more so than last week, where he seemed more demure and laid back and kind of melancholy in a way. But this week he was aggressive, he was outgoing, he was everything you want. And not to drag up the controversy again, but everything you want in a number one receiver. And I always said, when that draft happened and they took Watson in the second and they drafted Romeo in the fourth, I said Watson is your flashy, Dobbs is going to be your blue collar, because Dobbs is going to be the one that goes out there and just works his ass off to make plays, whereas Watson is the guy that you're going to throw deep, you're going to crisscross him, you're going to do all this stuff with him because he's got the athletic profile. I even away, and this is very loosely because I don't like making comparisons, and anybody who's ever listened to me for a long ass time knows I don't make comparisons very often. But I said when he was drafted that Romeo reminded me a lot of Devontae, and just because he was more the route runner, he wasn't a speed guy, he was the route runner, he was the guy that was going to work his way open more than speed his way open, and he was going to catch pretty much anything that was going to be thrown towards his way, and he's doing it, and a little bit quicker than what Devontae did. We all remember the Devontae down years because the people wanting Jeff Janis over Devontae and cut Devontae and all that. We didn't really have that with Dobbs. Dobbs stepped in day one, started making plays. Year two, really stepped into it. Again, he was on a learning curve just because of having Love as a first time starter. But now year three, if you believe what I've always said with the rule of three, this is his third year. This is the year that he's really taken that step towards being something in the league. So that's my long-winded answer on my first good for the week.
Yeah. So, and just to follow up on it, like what today's game showed is what you and I have both talked about, where you can tell Dobbs is the guy that he looks for when it's like chips are down kind of moment in the game. All like all of his catches were big catches today. I know they didn't all go for first downs, but oh shoot, the page I'm on, of course. It felt like his first 4 catches. Oh yeah, there he is. 8 catches, 6 first downs, and then his last catch didn't get a first down, but it got them 5 yards closer to the field goal. So, in a game where every yard counted, it's just you needed all of them. And of his 2 misses, one of them was the one where the pass got tipped over his head, and then I'm just blanking on the other incompletion that was targeted at him. So just a really efficient day at the office for Dobbs. Yeah, like you said, it would have been nice if he either got a touchdown or got those 6 more yards to get over 100, but just a really good day in the office for Dobbs today. Another good, my good, it's going to be this defense. And I know the Texans are missing Nico Collins, and he is a massive part of what they do on offense because he's honestly a mix of Watson and Dobbs, where he is their deep threat. But he also does a lot of, like you said about Dobbs, he's a blue collar guy, but he also just does a lot of more wide receiver stuff. He runs slants, runs digs, runs the timing routes, the multi moves. As Watson, he's getting better at those things, but he's more your field tilter. And for the Texans not to have Collins, you can see it's Stroud is struggling without him some, but even without him, I didn't think that we would hold Stroud under 50% passing and under 100 total 100 gross yards passing. Just, you can say whatever you want about this defense, and I think it was really good to see them have this kind of day without forcing any turnovers. The first game of the season that they didn't force a turnover, and I think it's really nice to see them have such a productive day without the help. I don't know even know what word you want to put with that, but without relying on turnovers to get off the field. It was good to see them force multiple three and outs. Um, the pass rush really played up today. I know this is leaking into like a difference, but you saw the pass rush play up, not just in the shit that Halfley called. That was really masterful in terms of crafting up. We talked about it where this Texans O line, you can confuse them, you can mess up their pass pro. The McKinney sack is because he stunts Gary over. So the tight end to the side that Gary and McKinney are on, he's looking inside, and McKinney just runs right around for the free sack. And while you had those, you also had plays where it was just a straight four-man rush and guys were getting pressure. Lucas, I thought, I know he had some missed tackles in the run game, but I thought he was creating a lot of good pressure off the edge against Tunsil, which is impressive for a second-year player. So good day in the office for the pass rush, and then another great day from Halfley. Just called and schemed up a really good game. I thought he was a little loose with his coverage early in the game. It felt like that I think it was the third drive the Texans had where it felt like they moved the ball a little too easily. But after that, he really just put the clamps in. And I know some people are like, oh, like the Packers defense once again giving up the lead late in the game. But I was like, this one is different than like the Barry ones, especially like the NFC division game, the against the 49ers last year, where like the offense moved the ball in that game and they scored in that game. This one, the offense didn't really do shit after putting up its 21st point on the game. And the defense was the one constantly giving them the ball back, giving them the ball back. It was the offense that wasn't doing jack squat with it. And honestly, I was worried that, when Stroud made that nice play to roll out, break the pocket, and convert that 3rd and 11, I was like, oh no, like they're going to make enough plays and they're going to kick the ball with the clock expiring kind of thing. But even that situation, the defense was able to bow its back, show it had a spine, and get a stop and get off the field and leave enough time for Love to lead us down the field. So really, really good, really encouraging day from the defense so far.
The only negative you could probably point to with this defense is the Joe Mixon 25 carries, 115 yards, 2 touchdowns. And I know we should save part of this for our next episode because that's when we do the segment, but I know you pointed it out in one of the group chats that we had, and I saw it, some other people were seeing it. The defense really took a slide when Quay went out of the game. Now, the argument can be made, yeah, Eric Wilson made some plays, but think about how he was doing it. It wasn't out in the open. It was, they had him running downhill and
Yep.
making the sack. He's a smaller guy. He's smaller than Quay, so he can fit those gaps a little bit better. This is not to take away
No,
from Wilson. They were a hell of a place, but they did take a little bit of a slide towards after Quay went out.
that end of the second
Whether
quarter,
it's they weren't getting the
yeah, that end of the second quarter, and when you could tell the defense was tired at the end of the fourth quarter, it was like there were points in the game where you're like, oh no, like they can't stop. Like it was like, oh god, they just somehow can't stop the run at this point. And it's like you said, the part that I just found really funny is it's like none of the people who dog Quay all the time were talking anything when the Packers couldn't stop the run worth a damn from the moment he got concussed to halftime. And then they started to make noise when Wilson gets his 2 sacks, he has the pass deflection, all like you said, nothing to take away from Wilson. When he was put in positions to make plays, he made plays. Then you had those people thumping their chest out like he's playing better than Quay does, blah, all that kind of crap. and then they all went
Help him
silent.
out.
And then they
Help him
all
out.
went silent when they started giving up rush yards at the end of the game again. So it's like, which side of the fence are you going to sit on? But like you said, we can dive into that. Yeah, nothing to take away from Wilson. When his number was called, he did make the plays that the team needed him to make. His pass rush was really good. And, when he was lined up to get a hit, he had that one where he just decleated Mixon on an inside run. But the Texans did adjust. They started to. They weren't quite traps, but it almost looked like they were running trap runs, and they caught Green Bay when we were slanting a little bit and stuff. So it's we'll see where it goes from here. Certain people are gonna, and there are people who were saying like, you notice who left the game and the run defense got worse, and then other people were like, oh look, it's better now. So you know, some guys are just on hit lists at this point, and it's gonna take them curing cancer for them to get off those lists. But overall, a good day for the defense, and as much as Mixon did gash us, he only was averaging 4.6 on the ground, which isn't great, but honestly, the way he was running at certain points in this game, you thought he was in like the 6+ yards per carry average and all. So something to work out, especially if Quay can't go in Jacksonville. But overall, like you hold an NFL team under 200 total yards of offense. That's a really good day at the office, no matter what.
Yeah, and if Quay's out for the week, kind of makes them wish that they wouldn't have kept Zane Anderson over Christian Welch, huh?
There's a couple of those on this roster right now, but yeah. And I thought, just to stay on the defense a little bit, I thought the interior D line guys were pretty active today. I thought Kenny had a really good game. He's starting to, I think what it is like, he's played so long in the NFL as a two gapping, hold the point of attack nose tackle, that this year Hafley's like, put it in forward and go upfield kind of thing. And I think Kenny, it took him a few weeks because he's like, oh my God, so much freedom. I get to jump a gap and go kind of thing. And then you had so many plays where he's like, oh, like, wait a minute, there goes the running back kind of thing. And he's kind of like, oh no. But like this week, you saw him like, he would get that step upfield, throttle it in, and then it's like, okay, like here's some tackles for loss and stuff. So it was good to see that from Kenny. And hopefully they can get Wyatt back next week, because that would be just a big shot in the arm for this front.
I think we as fans in that also fail to remember that these guys are getting used to a different scheme. So it always takes a little bit for them to get used to it. Kenny's been in a 3-4 since college. UCLA tends to run a 3-4, and that's what Kenny's been in since college. And so, and the big difference is in a 4-3 is they get a little bit more freedom than they do in a 3-4. So he's got to change his mindset completely. But yeah, although I have to say TJ Slayton's best hit came when he was on the sideline, and that was that
That was hilarious.
Stroud did that to if you're going to run into a guy on the sideline, I don't think I would pick TJ Slayton for anything.
I don't know. And I saw some, what's he doing there? It's like, you're running into his sideline. Could TJ have moved? Sure. But I do think that's as clean of a like sending a message play as you can get kind of thing. Because you can kind of see TJ did the slide like, oh, I'm watching the play on the Jumbotron. Oh, there you are, CJ. Like, it was pretty funny how he handled it. And you see CJ doing the like, whoa, like, aren't you gonna flag that? And TJ definitely did the like, oh, was someone there? Like,
Right. And I mean, it wasn't even that bad of a hit. And it was more CJ ran into TJ more than anything. And yeah, like you said, could Slayton have moved? Sure. But it's his sideline. Why are you
yeah,
going to force? Trust me, I'm a big guy. If I don't have to move, I'm not going to move. And, it's the same
nope.
for Slayton. I ain't going to move. The earth would have to be shaken for me to move. So But
What else you got
so
for the
let
good today?
to continue on. I uh the fan that stopped Joe Mixon from getting his Lambeau leap. That had to have been some of the best defense that happened all day. And then I want to kind of add on to that I can't remember who it was that tweeted it that or did an article on it saying that fan would get ejected. It's like he didn't get ejected. Did you watch the end of the game where he's clearly in the picture of McManus and the team doing Lambeau leaps?
I think
So, but
they probably
anyway,
just did the like,
you know the
oh, oh no, go for it.
no, go ahead. What were you gonna say?
Oh no, I just read. I saw a tweet that said like, oh, if you read the article, it does say that they like let him back in. So I wonder if they did the like, make sure he's not just piss drunk, and then they're like, okay, and maybe give him the stern like, don't push another player again, kind of thing, and then okay, go back to your seat.
I doubt that. I think the guy that wrote it was just kind of covering his ass on why that guy ended up there because they're pretty well if you get ejected, there's no second chance to it. You're out. They're pretty solid on that. That trust me. I remember going to the one and only time I went to family night. I know this is going to be story time with Joe, but the one and only time I went to family night, we were in line for to go into the stadium. Well, as everybody's lining up to get into the stadium, we get word that all their ticket scanners went down. The whole system went down. And so of course there's a mom, a dad, a grandma, and a couple of kids standing in front, a couple of people in front of me, and the mom's just having a fit. Why can't we get in? Why aren't they letting us in? The practice starts at this time. Why aren't they letting us in? What blah blah blah. So I watch her march all the way to the front of the line, and you can see her having a fit with the ticket takers. Then she comes back, and that's when she starts talking about how, oh well, their system's down. Why don't they have a backup system? Why don't they do this? We all got tickets. Why can't we just do this? So then she goes all the way back up front again, bitching and complaining. Finally, the ticket takers look at the cop that's standing with them and motion him over, and she starts going off on the cop, and all of a sudden you just see her finger go right into the cop's chest, and immediately the cuffs come on, and she was kicked out before even actually going into the game. So yeah, or into the practice. So yeah, they're pretty strict. If you're out, you're out. There's no coming back in, no matter what the excuse is. So I think it was just more that the writer of that article was just covering his ass on that. Now, could they have talked to him? Sure, they could have talked to him, but really, he didn't do overly much to, it's not like he jumped on the field and started wailing
No,
on Mixon. I know they said he grabbed his face mask, but okay,
like,
you
and
know,
then I saw some
that
Texan fan like they
happens.
poured beer on him, and I'm like, have you watched any other football games? Like, there's definitely been worse ones than that. So whatever, it's whatever. But like you said, well done, good sir. Like making sure, and
Yes.
like I put in another thread, like let's not act like Mixon deserves like the gold carpet in life or anything like that. Just have to read what he did when he was at Oklahoma. Like I don't care what. Like
Oh shit.
yeah. So another good one I
But I
have is
guarantee that fan will never have to buy a beer in the state of
nope.
Wisconsin again.
Nope. Titletown will have his picture on the good side of things. So yeah, like don't have to. He's knighted. He is knighted. But on the good side of things, we'll get into the bad side. But the good side of things, the Jordan Love bounce back effect continues to be strong. When he makes dumb decisions on the field, he does come back and make up for it really quickly. The and like that's the thing is for neither of his interceptions were of the just like horrible type today. Like they weren't great, but they're coachable. And the big thing is that like the touchdown to Kraft, what is that? That's him throwing the ball with pace and velocity over the middle of the field. Is it a little bit of a force? Sure, but you gotta, whereas Aaron was like trying to be a surgeon with the football. Love is a little bit of the you can't make money without risking money of mental process. And I think that the main thing is you see the like short term memory, and I know some people are like, oh, he's gonna just make the same mistake, but his two interceptions today weren't the same interception, and obviously you want to see that cleaned up. You don't want to see him continue this streak of whatever straight games with an interception, but it's good to see that when chips are down, he bounces back, and I think this is his like 12th straight game, or not 12th, but like it's somewhere in the vicinity of like 10th with like two touchdown passes or whatever in a row and stuff. So, and 200 passes, so, whatever those random ESPN stats are. But it's an impressive streak to keep going on a day where the offense was choppy. So good to see Love like continue to just shovel forward despite whatever's happening around him.
My last good, it'd have to be Josh Jacobs finally got his first receiving touchdown.
The only comment I have on that sequence is so LaFleur calls up this brilliant screenplay, and who who's our who's our commentary today? Was it um it was
Romo
Romo. Yeah,
and
Romo and Nats. And Romo was like lamenting that play so hard because he's like, like that's a walking touchdown. If Settle isn't there, he's like, there is nobody touching him, blah blah blah. And then that very next play, it's that they leak Sean Ryan out into the flat, and it's that little like kind of swing screen play. And then I was kind of laughing because I was like, they there was a bit of like LaFleur's like, we are this close, we are getting him that receiving touchdown, even if we have to go for it on 4th and goal kind of thing and stuff. And I was just like, they're just gonna keep pumping balls to him at this point. And it was just good that they got the touchdown on 2nd down on that one. But yeah, you could just kind of feel it like the LaFleur kind of just putting his foot in the ground and saying, we're getting this over with at this point.
well, this isn't the first time this year that they've forced that issue that they were because I want to say it was during the Minnesota game that I remember a sequence where they kept trying to get it to Jacobs on a pass to get him the touchdown. So no matter what they say at their press conference and that, they are definitely trying to do it. Now let's just hope it doesn't take as long to get his next one as it did the first one. So, but it was a good play. Like like we said, they were pretty much trying to get it to happen. It's still hard to believe that he's in year whatever it is and he still had this is his first one. Yeah, 5 or 6. I know it. I can't remember if they declined his 5th year option or if they picked up his 5th year option. Um, but it just it's hard to imagine that because unless you're a scrub of a running back, you at least have one in your career. But that just goes to show how bad of a team the Raiders have been and how, yeah. So it's good to see. So that's definitely a good.
And then Dan Whelan continues to just be the shining star of the special teams. Like, even on the game winning kick, he again, for the gazillionth time, bailed Matt Orzek out again. And, like, and Romo said it so loud. He's like, or no, Dance was like, oh, it's not a good snap, but Whelan gets it down. And then when they go over it on the replay, Romo is just like gushing. He's like, that's not an easy snap to catch, and he gets it down and doesn't disrupt McManus and all that kind of stuff. And those punts that he was hitting, because he was punting out of his end zone for what felt like a whole quarter of the game and kept flipping the field position. He almost got Desmond King, but Desmond King went to Iowa, so he's smarter than Jalen Naylor, and he didn't do what Naylor did 3 weeks ago and try to field one that was like 2 feet over and behind his head. But you saw it, you saw him at the last moment be like, oh no, it's still going, and he like pulled his hands down at the very last moment. But Whelan just was launching some rockets off of his right foot today, and like I said, saved the day getting that football down for McManus on the game-winning field goal. So that's my third good for the game. Is the rest of special teams might be shit, but we have a punter who can also hold for field goals.
I think he definitely needs the nickname of like Celtic Cannon. I think we just call him that from now on, is the Celtic Cannon.
You gotta go copyright that already.
But yeah, there's not much more I can add to it. He's been an
Yeah.
absolute boon. It's hard to believe that we've had a hard time getting punters and kickers, and now we've at least got a punter.
All right. Let's get into the bad. So my first bad is I didn't care for LaFleur's play calling for really most of the second half of this game. Like getting them down the field coming out of on out of halftime, they get the 3 and out, force a punt, get the ball back, and then go right down the field and score the lead taking touchdown. And Romo was the whole like third quarter, he was, or like going into halftime, coming out of halftime, all he was doing is like, this is the best second half team, this is the best second half team, blah blah blah. And as a Packer fan, you did kind of feel like, oh, like they stuffed them again, and then they went right down the field and scored. You're like, this is it. They might put 40 up today because they've got their shit together. The thing is ready to go. And then like the next drive, you have that. I think it was the next drive. You have that sequence where it's like run, and then on 3rd and 1, it's like let's can to a jet sweep. And okay, at that point, you had run 2 jet sweeps for a net negative yardage. And it's like at that point you've got to kind of have it in your head like maybe it's not the day for that. And I know that part of it is like the Texans are missing, key players all over their defense, but it's like the one thing that D'Amico has them is they're a very disciplined unit. It doesn't, and as today shows, it doesn't matter what 11 guys they have out there. All the misdirection shit, it wasn't working. The way that you beat them was you just told Jacobs, you told Wilson, who didn't have a great day, but just told him pop it into full wheel drive and go forward kind of thing. And I think LaFleur got a little too cute with those. And I know it's only 3 plays, but those were all 3 very key plays because Watson's negative yardage one, that killed the drive. Obviously, the Reed one, that was on 3rd down and that killed the drive. And then the Melton one, I don't remember exactly which drive that was on, but you lose yards on a play. So it's like, I don't know what they were really trying to accomplish there. And then it just felt like they were so disjointed in the second half. And I know part of that is not being able to sustain drives, but also it kind of felt like LaFleur was doing more prodding and like experimenting than at that point just sticking to what was really working earlier in the game. So, like I said, it was like a B minus, maybe a C plus if I'm really grouchy about it, but it wasn't LaFleur's greatest day at the office today.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. And I'm going to add on to yours with mine, and that's the opposite end of Jordan Love. We had the good part of it where, yeah, he had the touchdowns, he had the yards, he had the the ability to the short-term memory and stuff like that. But to some of the throws he was making, definitely the 2 interceptions are kind of on him. The even though the Tucker ball was touchdown was an amazing throw, that was also inches away from being an interception. So he's got to clean some of that up. Yeah, I understand that he's never going to be a Rodgers and you can't expect him to be a Rodgers, but I also don't want a Favre. And because Favre had too many of the heart attack moments, and I don't want to live and die by 50-50. Is it going to be intercepted? Is it going to be a touchdown? Is it going to be intercepted? Is it going to be a touchdown? So that I would have to say is a bad. Yeah, it didn't bite him in the butt too much today, but it did still cost some points because of the mistakes he made.
Yeah,
Obviously,
and
the one interception you can't. Oh, I was just going to finish the one
yeah,
interception. You can't 100% keep on him because it bounced off one guy, bounced off a second guy, and went into the third guy's hands. But you got to question: does that throw get made, or does he look for a different outlet? So
yeah.
yeah,
So
clean that shit up.
on his two interceptions, the main thing is, like I said, so in the good side, he's not making the same mistake on both of those. So the first one, um, Jalen Petrie baits him into that throw, but my take on it, and this is going off of Rob Domowski always posts those, like, those 11 or the 22-man dot, the player tracker thing. And if you watch the tracker one for his first interception, my only critique on it is Petrie pre-snap is playing, he's shaded so far inside off of Dobbs that it's like you have to look at that and think either he can't cover Dobbs or he's playing games with you where he's not, he's gonna do something where he's expecting you to be throwing the number 3 wide receiver out. Because if you just look at alignment, he's not inside shoulder of Dobbs, he's like a full player over from inside shoulder of Dobbs. And so to me, that's one where you look at it, you can kind of bluff call it, because if you bluff snap it, Petrie might, he might shift over in front of Dobbs, or he might step to do what he ended up doing on the play. So to me, that's one of those where it's like side adjustment before the snap, look at Dobbs first, and then you can still, if Petrie does buzz underneath the outside of Dobbs's route, then you can come back to Wicks and and he's not going to be there to disrupt that pass. And then the second one, there's edge pressure, and Love feels it a little more than he probably should. And to me, that's one of those where it's not a full on excuse, because you still got to be able to make throws under pressure, but also you can definitely tell the pressure affected that throw on the second interception. But like you said, that's for tape. That's something to improve on. I thought that he had room to fade to his left and step into that throw a little better than he did, whereas he kind of just kept rolling, he kept moving backwards in the pocket. Whereas if he's going to his left, not even like running to his left, but just drifting to his left, he's more in rhythm when he steps that way, and then that throw is at least down. And maybe it comes up short to Watson, but it's safe that way because it's short, it's down and outside, where the it's not the guy covering Watson, it's the safety coming from depth. We ragged on Kalen Bullock going into this game, but that is the one thing that he's good at, is coming from depth when he identifies a bad throw and he has really good ball skills. So you went into the Lions Den and you got eaten on that one. So like you said, got to be better about that. My second bad is going to be, oh yeah, go for it.
No, I was just going to say I saw something on Twitter. I don't know how true it is, but if it and I like I said, I don't know how true it is. I don't know if they did the math right or whatever, but if he continues on this pace, he's on pace for like 51 touchdowns and 27 interceptions.
Hold on, let's just check the thing. I think the I think the
And
touchdowns is a little too. I think they're going just off of, because yeah, it's weird because you have to multiply it by, because he's only played 5 games. Yeah, that might be right actually. Hold on, let me get my phone out. You talk. I'm
well,
gonna
like I
do
said,
some
I
maths.
don't know how right it is, but I'm pretty sure I saw a tweet that somebody had posted, and I don't remember who it was, so they could have just pulled numbers out of thin air, but it said that he was on pace for 51 touchdowns and 27 interceptions. Well, there is no way I want to see 27 interceptions in a freaking game, or
So
I mean in a year.
yeah, I think they went a little high on it. So he's at 15-8 right now. I think it totaled it up now. Yeah. So it did total it up already. So he's played 5 games. He's gonna play in 15 total in the regular season. So he would be at 45 touchdowns and 24 interceptions.
blood, are you really going to want to sit through a season of 24 interceptions?
Nope. Like you said, got to be better. Got to be better.
So he does. He's got to clean it up a little bit. And that's not to say he's a bad quarterback. That's not to say anything like that. It just, he's still growing, even though he's been in the league a long time. We also got to remember this is only his second year starting. He's missed a couple of games already. He might as well have missed the first game just because of how shitty that first game was, and go from there. So, he's going to continue to grow, but he's just got Tom Clements has got to get in there and say, Jordan, bad.
Yep. Just like you said, it's not like it's the kind where he's dropping back to pass and he's throwing it right in the chest of a linebacker. I know he did that like earlier in the season, but it is more the like it's dialing it in. It's the fine tuning, being a little bit more crisp in his dropbacks. Like I said, being a little more intuitive or big picture aspect on his pre-snap reads and things like that. So it's it's almost there. It's really close. Like yeah. So we're trending in the right direction. My other bad for today is just tackling, and as much as we want to ignite the like Quay or not war, really what it came down to in the run defense today is they just couldn't tackle worth a shit for the second quarter and then the like last part of the fourth quarter. Like I said, I thought Lucas had a good game rushing the passer, but he could have had like 5 tackles for loss today. And like I said, and I do think that's a function of like you're back to playing down and all that kind of stuff, and the angles are a little different from how you're playing in Barry's defense last year. Just got to get back to the fundamentals. Just take your time with Lucas, but he's not the only one. Like I know I just pointed out because a lot of people are like, "Oh my god, it was Luke," but it was like Lucas would miss it, and then two guys would take bad angles, and then Mixon's out the backside of the play, kind of thing and stuff. And it's just they go through these periods where they're one of the better tackling teams, and then they go through like a drive or two where you're like, do you guys remember that you have arms attached to your shoulders? And it's like just do the fundamental shit, because if they tackle even average instead of bad on those bad drives where Mixon got most of his yards, the Texans might not have broached 150 total yards of offense, which is just wild to think about on a day where, like I said, your offense really scored about, I don't want to say half, but like it scored half as often as it should have. Just not necessarily they would have scored 4 more touchdowns or 3 more touchdowns and another field goal, but you figure with how well they did move the ball at certain times, they should have scored 2 to 3 more times at minimum. But for that not to happen and your defense to, like I said, be constantly in situations where your punter just punted out of your own end zone, you just clean up the tackling and that defensive performance becomes that much better. So it's bad, but again, fixable.
Yeah, and that's the good thing about the bads is most of them are fixable, and it just it takes a little bit of time, it takes a little bit of work, but it is possible for them to fix it up. Uh,
Want to just get into ugly at this point,
I'm
or you
trying
got?
to think.
I know I'm thinking that
Yeah,
most of my
because I
stuff left is
the
ugly
la
at this point.
yeah. So the last I can combine my two, and that goes back. Well, I guess technically three, and that goes to the special teams plays. They let Pierce have a pretty decent run. The Ballantyne running into the ball, the bad snap by Orzik. You know, luckily McManus has been around long enough that it didn't affect him too much, and Whelan was able to wrangle it. But that also goes back to the issues with Anders and Narvison is how much of it was the process more than the actual kicker. And so, but the Ballantyne, he didn't track the ball. He wasn't aware of where the ball was going. that's something you got to be if you're going to be on special, or got to have when you're on special teams, is awareness for things. Now, obviously, you can't be watching the ball the whole time you're running down the field, but you at least need to know, have a feel of where it is. Also, maybe that should have been something for Jaden to have fair caught and actually secured the ball instead of letting it bounce. I didn't pay attention too closely to the situation, so I don't know if it was just too late in the game to be calling the fair catch. So, or was it Jaden or was it Nixon?
That was Nixon. So that one I have in my ugly because that's just and I
Yeah,
so we'll just both talk about this because we're talking about the same thing to some extent. But so that's an ugly on Nixon for me because okay, you're right that Ballantyne needs to have a little bit more awareness on it. But okay, the reason I put that solely on Nixon is because the other gunner from the other side of the field than that that was across the field from Ballantyne, he's right behind Ballantyne when Ballantyne touches the ball. So to me, first off, like you said, Nixon's got to catch that ball. The sun was behind him on that play. He's looking away from the sun. Catch the fucking ball. He already called for a fair catch, and inexplicably he's like, "Nah, I'm not going to catch it." And then you can tell he didn't call off Ballin. Some people were saying like Ballantyne's got it, but I'm like, I don't think Nixon called him off. And some people and they're okay, like, and you've got to be overly demonstrative as the returner, whether it's the double point, whether it's waving your hands like this, like, and you're yelling the whole time, like Nixon, whatever it was, Nixon did not do enough. Because, like I said, it would be on. I would be more swayed to it being on Ballantyne if nobody else was there but him and Nixon. But the fact that the other gunner from the other side of the field was also there tells me that Nixon didn't do enough to wave him off, and that's why Ballantyne's kind of like, wait, you didn't like. You can kind of see it when I think he hears the ball hit the turf when it initially bounces, and that's why he kind of like, he kind of looks at Nixon, then he turns around, then he's like, you can almost like see his brain going, wait, he didn't catch it. And then by the time that he realizes something's up, it's hitting his leg, and you're just kind of like, fuck and stuff. But it's ugly to me because Nixon botched that on two different fronts. Like I said, first off, that's all avoided if you just catch the fucking punt. And second off, if you're gonna, for whatever friggin' reason, he decided not to field it, even if you gotta tackle Ballantyne and the other gunner, make sure they're not there. But yeah, it was just an inexplicably long day at the office for special teams. I put the Pierce return in ugly too because it was like they lost lane integrity because one guy hit Pierce, and then they were like, oh, like play is kind of over, and then like Pierce is like, oh, half of the guys all to my left stopped running. I'm gonna keep running, and luckily Ballantyne and Valentine were able to
yeah.
like escort him out of bounds and shit. So it doesn't look good for Basaccia because it's not even like he's not being creative or he's not. It's the again just like the tackling. It's the base fundamentals, but the guys that were fucking up today are like your guy. Like Nixon is like his dude from Oakland or from the Raiders. Reed, like one of the reasons Nixon was even out there is that Reed. Okay, and so some people were like, "Oh, he called for a fair catch inside the 10." To me, I think it's inside the 5 is where like the no-go zone is nowadays, which Reed subsequently did the punt after the Nixon muff or the Nixon no field punt. But like, some people are like, why is he fair catching it at the 8? I was like, Whelan showed you he's so good that he can get that thing to bounce, and you you gotta field it because you don't want to risk having it kick up and you end up on the 2-yard line kind of thing and stuff. But I just feel like Bisaccia is like searching, and instead of being the man with the plan, it feels like he's kind of just taking shots in the dark, and his unit is reacting in step with that. And we've seen this unit do solid to good things here and there, but all the mistakes are piling up, and it is a little bit of that Office Space meme where it's like, what is it you do here? and it's unfortunate because the guys obviously believe in him. They all play really hard for him, but the amount of mental mistakes that this unit makes is just it's not good. It's flabbergasting and it's bad. It's ugly. It's ugly. So that's where I stand on that side of it. But yeah, what else stood out as ugly to you today?
Well, I just want to touch back with it. The only, and this isn't really making an excuse for Nixon. It's a thought that happened when you were explaining things. I know some of these kickers, like Whelan can do it, and or these punters can do it. Torrey Taylor was notorious for it at Iowa, and that's another reason why I hated seeing him go to the Bears. But they can kick it where it puts a weird knuckle, where it's hard for the returner to make that, determine where he's going to make that catch. So the only thing that I can think of with Nixon was when it was coming down, he was so unsure of if he was going to be able to field it cleanly that he was. But that goes back to your point. He should have been more active in waving others off, and but I don't put it solely on him because, like I said, that also lends to okay, well, your gunners need to have a little bit more awareness of where the ball is. Because if you're not even sure if your guy caught it or not, that tells me you're not aware of what's going on. So, like I said, that doesn't make any excuses. It's a complete ugly thing. All the special teams really had. Again, I go back to the Orsic. You know, was Anders the problem? Was Narvison the problem? Or was it the beginning of the process that was the problem? I don't know what the final total was. Let's see if I can pull it up real quick. Because I know Anders was playing for the uh 49ers today, and I know he was doing pretty good, but then I caught that he missed a PAT. Let's see. I know this is so riveting. 2 for 2, long of 50, but he did miss the one extra point. So I mean, or long of 55, sorry. So, like I said, does can you blame the kicker completely? Obviously, he's got to learn to adjust for it. Or is there an issue with the whole process? It can't be Whelan. Whelan's been friggin' magic there trying to wheel in some of these friggin' long snaps. So that's another area where you got to kind of question Bisaccia's decision making because you got to believe Orsic is another one of his guys. So, what's going on there? As for another ugly, I really don't have anything. Uh, Maybe Stefan Diggs.
No, that's just stupid. You make all of that woofing, and then you're like, okay, I know he had the one dig that he caught that was like a decent game, but really the most impactful play he had all game was 5 receptions for 23 yards, a long of 17. So that means you had 4 catches for 6 yards. Well done, dude. Well done. And his, I thought the biggest
Well, I
impact
guess
play he
you
had
think
was
Mark
drawing a
after
deep.
the game.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He's just a head case. Like, you know, the more like the younger player that I liken it to is so like, there was the whole like Packers fucked up. They should have drafted George Pickens, and like that. They set back the roster by not picking Pickens and stuff. I'm like, okay, everyone makes so much out of the Dobbs thing and all that kind of stuff and blah blah blah. Pickens has numerous times made, you know, I don't know the guy, I don't know the full situation, but I've seen Pittsburgh writers say like he's made it about himself kind of thing, and he does like
That was one of the red flags coming out of
right.
college for
And yeah,
him
and
was
you saw
that
multiple writers say like the Packers would never touch a guy like that, and it's like, yeah, the production is great, but it's like, but what else is happening behind the scenes? And like, you know, in terms of where Pickens stands with Pittsburgh, he is like the guy in the wide receiver room. They have other players there, but it's Pickens and then there's a drop off to the next guy. Whereas here it's like, and like I said, like stupid people made the stupid comment about Dobbs where it's like he's the fourth or fifth receiver on this roster. Who's he to make complaints? But like you and I have been saying, is like, who's the guy that Love is like, if I put this up, he's gonna catch it. It's Dobbs. And so all that to say, like, Diggs is of the same tree where it's like it's about the show instead of winning the game kind of thing. And I'm just glad that for the most part the Packers shoved him in a locker and didn't let him get out. And uh, you know, yeah, like I said, I put that more in stupid than ugly. I don't care. Like he can say whatever the fuck he wants. This scoreboard, like you guys didn't win the game, and you had a running back's worth of production as a receiver. Well done, Stephon Diggs, you dumbass. But the only other ugly I had was this ref crew was just I don't want to say they were dumb, but they were like very oblivious to how Houston's O line gets off the ball. And so I know a lot of people, Bears fans, Vikings fans complain about how like Bulaga and Bakhtiari would like move before the ball was snapped and stuff like that. But you talk to all the old linemen, Wall says it all the time, Joe Thomas says it all the time. Whitworth has even said it when he does Thursday Night Football now, where the way the refs look at it is like they will give you the benefit of the doubt if you're moving as an aggressive movement close enough to the snap of the ball. They are not going to, unless you're like so obviously going into your drop before the ball is snapped. They're like, it's like the play clock thing where it's like, oh, like I can't watch the ball, or I can't watch the play clock and the quarterback snapping the ball at the same time. So if it's snapped and if I look up and see zeros, but when I look down it's snapped, it's like, oh, it was clean kind of thing. Same thing with the offensive tackle is it's like if he like gets in his stance but the ball is like moved, it's like it's clean kind of thing. Like, we don't have chameleon eyes. We can't look in two different directions at once. But what the Texans were doing, and like if you don't even have to like have all 22. You just watch the broadcasting. You just watch their O line. They're like leaning back like this on the snap of the ball, and I think every one of those. And Lucas was the one that was freaking the fuck out and he was right. Like even Romo was like, he's not wrong. Like the one where he got called offsides on, it's because Tunsil is like this, and he's like, and that's the one that should be called every time because it's like you're not set. So whether you want to say it's a false start or illegal motion or whatever, you can't get in your stance and then start to like London Bridge is falling down or something like that. And the fact that the refs called it wrong 3 times on 3 different edge rushers, I'm like, come on, dude, like get your fucking head out of your ass. And because I'm like, that's one that you cannot miss because it's not the whole like it's bang bang, that it's this slow progressive thing where it's like you can't fucking miss that call. And for all the other like kind of ticky tack things that they called today, I was like, you keep messing that call up and you can. And like that's one of those where um I know some people are like, oh, like, but I'm like, that's one of those ones where like if it's replay, you should be able to like be like, no, like he's moving early because it's that other guy who moved kind of thing and stuff. So yeah, that was one that it was just like, okay, so you're gonna do this all game and you're gonna let him get away with it all game, and not it wouldn't irritate me so much if it was just happening. And but the fact that you're calling us for the penalty, that's the part that I have an issue with, is like they're blatantly doing this thing and then you're calling us for a penalty for reacting to them doing that thing. That's where I have a big issue with it, and it's just another bout of shitty refereeing work by the league.
Yeah, although I do have to say there was a couple of times, and I was watching highlights again before we recorded so I could refresh on some things. Uh, I do have to say there were a couple of times I'm glad they weren't paying attention because on a couple of snaps from Myers, he double clutched the ball where you could see it move, and then he would come back up with it. So they could have easily got him for false start on that. But I agree. Like you said, the one with Lucas was completely a joke because the guy was popping out. I don't think it was Tunsil though. I think it was Kenyon Green. You're
Yeah,
muted, so
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
assuming you agreed with me.
yeah. No, that's the one. Like I said, even Romo was like he like before they even made the call, he was like, "This should be on the Texans because someone was moving early." And then Romo was like, you could hear the like disdain in his voice when they didn't call it. He was like, "Oh, okay, they're call-" like you heard that like very like
Yeah,
snarky. Okay, I guess it's on Lucas. Like, but yeah, he saw it
and
all the
then there
way.
was the one pass interference call in the end zone
The one that Diggs drew on
that
the two
even
point.
like, yeah, and Robo's like, that isn't really, there's nothing there. I mean, there was hand fighting, but they were within 5 yards of each other,
And Diggs
and
was
you can
fighting as much
contact
as
within
yeah,
5 yards.
yeah. And luckily they blew up the next 2 point conversion attack. I think it was Evan Williams that just smoked Mixon in the backfield anyways. So it ended up being much ado about nothing.
And
But
that
yeah,
can go to the good,
yeah,
yeah, and that can go to the good side. Evan Williams has really started popping out as a player, so that's good to see. But so yeah, but I mean, and I keep seeming to have to say this every week. It's just not Packers.
yeah.
The reffing crews all over are getting nuts with stuff. I don't know if it's to the point where they're going to have to start doing what the MLB is doing, where they have, I know they already have the New York crew and all that, but I don't know if they need to have them more involved in things because this is getting kind of ridiculous with a lot of the calls that are being made or
And
not made or
yeah, no, go for it. Keep going. Yeah.
no, that's about all I, because the
Oh,
only
okay.
other thing that I can bring up is, and the only other thing that I can bring up is, and I don't even, my games are all running together, so my mind is mush. I think it was the Iowa game, not this weekend's, but one of the Iowa games this year where the field goal was kicked and it went right over the upright and it should have been no good, but they couldn't review it because it's a non-reviewable play.
I think like I think it was this week because I saw it. They're
No, it
someone
wasn't
tweeted
this
it.
weekend. I know it
Oh,
wasn't this weekend.
oh, okay. But I think I
So
know
it
which one
might have
because
been
there.
last weekend.
Yeah, because I think I forget. I think it was Bruce Feldman where it's like he kind of tweeted like, "Huh," and he like tweeted out what the ref said, and it was something like, "If the ball goes over the top of the not the but over the top of the upright, it like can't be determined or something like that." And so like Feldman like he went on this like 2 or 3 tweet thread where he was like, "So if it does anything else, we can look at it, but because it did that." Like replay doesn't exist like what the like yeah so yeah and,
Well, and even
and I like we
Feldman
said
was
we've
sitting there like,
we've
"Oh no, they
lauded
can't. They can't review that. No, they can't review that." And it's like, then what the good? What's good?
right and
Yeah.
they keep and kind of what you're going back to about the New York refs where it's like they keep touting this is the referee headquarters and we have 40 guys in this room watching 22 screens and they're and I love the progress they've made so far with the like with assistance changed it to a first downs with this with that. But there are so many times where one of the MGO blog, one of these University of Michigan podcasts that I listen to, they have this joke where they're like, you can tell when like the referees when they huddle, and you can tell like 5 of the 6 refs are like, that shouldn't be a penalty. We can pick it up, but Kyle over there is like, I'm calling this flag. Like, and there's so many of those moments where it's like you said, even if it is like DPI or something, like New York should like, and it looks so bad when you have the play-by-play, the color commentator, and the rules analyst all coming in and being like, I don't know what they're looking at there. But then, yeah, it's like New York should have the ability to just be like, come on, guys, like this is horrible. Like, did any of you really see this and stuff? So yeah, like it, they've done they honestly have improved, like the whole with assistance thing has made a lot of things better, but they can still be so much better. But we won't, and you and I, we try to be good about this where we only talk about the referees when it's a win, because we don't want to be those people that are like it's all on the refs. And not even if we lose a game, we're never it's only the refs, because it never is. But especially when they win a game and something sticks out like a sore thumb, it is one of those where it's like, okay, like you seriously gonna keep getting this wrong the whole game? So but other than that, like
And
we
I won't call out
go for it.
and I won't call out refs if it's happening on both sides. But if it just seems like one side is consistently getting these horrible calls, then I'll say something about it. But if they're evenly, you're going to have that. At least that's non-biased and it's a little bit fair. But
Yeah.
it looks like you're having fun over there with the family, so we probably should wrap up here pretty quick.
So, like we said, big game for the Packers. You beat one of the teams, like we said, Texans are having issues left and right, with injuries, Nico Collins out, half their secondary out, but this is still a marquee game on the schedule. One of your, an opponent that has Super Bowl aspirations like the Packers do, not necessarily one of the front runners in their conference, but is expected to go far in the playoffs, and you won that game. And it's super important because you keep you moved out of the fourth position in the division, because Chicago was idle this week, and you got help from Detroit because Detroit knocked off Minnesota, so you're just a game back from first place in the division. And that Detroit game in a couple weeks, that's going to be really tough, but if you can win that, you're kind of putting yourself potentially in a driver's seat position, because you just got to keep stacking these wins, and this was a big one. And I know it took until the 11th hour to get this one, but like we both said at the top, as frustrating as this game was to watch because of how sloppy they were at different points, they still showed the maturity to find a way to pull this thing out and secure a W to keep pace in the NFC North. And that's what good teams do. So if you don't have anything more, we'll do our usual outro. Um, Stop me if anything pops into your mind, because I know that's how things work when you get to our age. But check out our website, ohanapackers.org. Please check out our merch. I know Joe has been putting together some fun and really intricate designs on a bunch of things. Support our two drives right now: cancer awareness and true. Like we joke, we're trying to not get in the NFL's crosshairs by saying their slogan. So, military appreciation, to keep those two drives going. Check out the blog posts, check out the streams of the episodes. Follow the show on Twitter at Ohana_Packers, on Instagram at Ohana Packers Edition, and on Facebook. Please follow the podcast. Follow the podcast on your favorite podcasting apps. Like and subscribe, and positive or negative comments. We want all of your feedback to give you the content you're looking for. It's victory. Well, recording this Sunday, but this comes out on Tuesday. Enjoy victory Tuesday, victory Sunday night, Monday, and Tuesday. Packers are traveling to Jacksonville, which under the previous couple regimes has been just a torture chamber for them. So hopefully the Packers get a win, and Love can the get the team off to a good start in Jacksonville and get another win under their belt. But until then, we'll have our preview episode coming out on Thursday. So until then, go Pack, go, and aloha.